Hello, welcome to Tangent Tuesdays. It's Friday.
Yeah, Friday what?
March 1st.
Yay, March 1st. February's finally over.
Yeah, we had an extra day of February, so that was pretty cool.
Was it?
Yeah, I had a good day yesterday.
Oh, well, yeah, I had a pretty good day too.
Wait, actually, what the fuck? What did I do yesterday? No, I worked. I worked yesterday. I worked, but I had a good day, a good night after work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's on topic?
Yeah, I don't know. You said you were going to be doing that Chicago stuff, but we're not very far with that. So let's talk about other stuff. I don't know. How about we got this episode will be coming out on Super Tuesday. And we got that coming up to look forward to. Do you think if Nikki Haley does remotely bad, she'll drop out, or do you think she'll stick it through all the way to the bitter end?
You know what? I kind of want her. I want her to stick it through to the end now.
I do too, but I also don't think it's gonna matter.
Yeah. What brought me to this conclusion is yesterday I watched Andrew Callahan's Secure the Border.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
It's pretty interesting. So there was this rally. Supposedly it was going to be 70,000 strong or 700,000 strong. It was supposed to be this huge gathering of patriots, quote unquote. Like a caravan that a Trump caravan, I suppose, but for the border. Anyway, Andrew goes to the location where this was supposed to happen, and there isn't.
It was in Eagle Pass, right? There's
Eagle Pass, Texas.
Eagle Pass.
There wasn't a lot going on specifically at the border. They apparently had a ranch meetup location. There was this Christian ranch, and they met up at the ranch, the rally.
Do you know the name of the ranch?
I forget, but it was something Children's Christian Ranch or something like that.
Okay, good. Because I was looking at a ranch down there to possibly go to Eagle Pass, Texas for the eclipse coming up in a month.
Yeah.
Because Eagle Pass is supposed to have right around that spot of land is supposed to have the longest duration of a little over 4 minutes.
Oh.
And that'd be pretty cool to see, but then all this shit with the border stuff.
I was just thinking of going to Southern Illinois.
Yeah, I'm split between Southern Illinois and Austin, Texas.
You know what's crazy? Indianapolis is completely covered by the totality.
Yeah.
Map. So all of the people in Indianapolis are going to see it.
Yeah, they don't have to move. Cool. But the thing is, they'll see it if it's clear.
Oh, yeah.
I know. That's kind of why I was thinking originally to go to Texas, because Texas in April sounds like it'd be the best chance to have low cloud cover.
True. Anyway, back to Andrew Callahan. He's at the Eagle Pass. He was in Eagle Pass.
Aggressive?
What do you mean? No,
you just cut off our tangent, man. Fuck you.
Fuck you. You want to fucking talk about something completely entirely different.
I wanted to talk about how I was getting to the point of a hunting ranch down there.
Oh my fucking God, this doesn't matter. We're going. So Andrew Callahan is at the Patriots protest rally. There's no one there, and then they tell him that he has to pull up to the ranch. He pulls up to the ranch. It's about 600 people, so a lot less than the 70,000, whatever they wanted to project.
You said 600?
Yeah.
That's pretty small compared to what they were hoping for.
Yeah, but a really interesting thing that a lot of the people there talked about. First of all, the median age or the average age of the people there at the rally was pretty old. So from 50 plus. So retirement age.
Not surprised.
Right.
Retirement age being the people who would probably have the free time to go drive down to Texas.
True.
Also, were they did in the piece? Did Callahan interview them to see where they were coming from? Because I'm wondering how many of them were from in-state versus out-of-state.
I don't think he went into. I don't think he asked those questions to the people he showcased on the video. A really interesting thing is, a lot of the people there are retirees, right? So a lot of their grievances have to deal with their Social Security, right? So what they're stating is that their Social Security isn't enough to cover pretty much for anything now. Like, let's say, like, we found out that the average, like, retirement Social Security check given out is around $1,700, $1,800.
Okay.
So if you live in an expensive, like if you live in a city, that's not really a lot to go by on.
He said $1,700 or $1,800. That's like per month.
Yeah, that's the average. And like the people he interviewed, they were like receiving like $1,200 to like $1,600 per month of Social Security checks. And yeah, so like what they're saying is like, a lot of us are receiving these Social Security or small time pensions. We can't afford to like live by, like we have to pay our phones and our phone bills and stuff, blah blah blah. And she's like, the government's giving out free like shelter and food and phones to all the migrants, and they're not helping any of the retirees. And like, if the government has the ability to procure these resources and money to help these people, why can't they procure resources and money to help the citizens of the country, right?
It seems like the same grievances that like Black Chicago residents had about half a year ago to almost a year ago now, when Chicago had big headlines during the mayoral election, because there was a lot of like, how do I say this? There were a lot of people who were going to the like town hall meetings and complaining exactly about that, saying like, okay, you have all this money to build all these shelters, to give all this assistance to the migrants coming in, but what about us? What about our communities that have been underfunded and underdone for a while now? Do.
Okay, hello, we're back.
We were talking about, at least I was bringing up the comparison of the retirees at the border who had sounded like similar complaints to the impoverished Black community in Chicago when it comes to the migrant assistance programs.
So Chicago has received a lot of federal money to deal with first like the COVID crisis, and I think they received some more money to deal with the migrant crisis, but this was like a while ago when it first sort of started, I believe. I may be wrong on that, but interesting thing that I found out a couple of weeks ago is that a lot of the federal money that was given to Chicago for the COVID-19 crisis, a lot of that money is still unused. So like the city hasn't spent it yet. I think it's like a couple $100 million that they were given.
I'm guessing there are probably like requirements for what that money can or cannot be spent on.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of like bureaucracy involved, but it's still, I guess, unique. Actually, I don't know if that may be the case, but I don't know how other cities have fared with their federal grants. But Chicago still has, I think, a majority of the money to spend. So like over 50% of the money to spend.
I don't know. I'm going to have to look into this later, but I remember seeing something about how alarming percentage, not a majority, but a large minority of all of the COVID dollars from the 4 to 5 trillion that was spent on the COVID emergency bills just hasn't been spent yet. It's just there.
Yeah. I mean, if Chicago can do it, I'm sure other places could just hoard it just as well.
Hoard it for the next pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like another idea that's been coming to me recently is communal monetary policy. For example, in the city, here, especially Chicago, it's very specific and unique, I guess, in the U.S. large cities, the way we're set up. Our city government is essentially like little kingdoms that pay tribute to the city. So like each alderman is essentially like a little lord, right? And this lord has a lot of say and sway into what goes on in their district or dominion.
Welcome to my fiefdom.
Yeah, they're fiefdoms. If someone wants to build something, they have to go through the alderman. if someone wants to like open up different businesses, they have to go through the alderman's office. And the alderman's office, essentially, at the end of the day, if they delegate, depending on how they delegate, has, you know, the say in what goes on in their little fiefdom. So, interestingly enough, I've met through different opportunities of volunteering and like organizations and like organizing. I've met these orgs that come together, like different communities form up and build groups to either push forward certain political agendas that affect our local communities. So there's a lot of involvement in local politics. Another interesting thing in regards to these groups is that I've met or I am aware of a monetary community. Community monetary group. So the Chinatown, there's like a Chinatown conglomerate of business owners, and they're all small-time business owners, so they're not super huge corporates, but they have formed the group together to advocate and push forward for policies within their district and essentially within like the city. So I thought that was pretty interesting and really cool that this like subsection of the city, and it's pretty famous within the city for being this touristy place, even for locals. Like if you're a local, you're like, oh, let's go to Chinatown and have some fun. They have set up their community organization, but it's more so than just organizing. It's monetary as well, because they all have interests in maintaining their businesses and making it easier for them to make money.
So then do these businesses all pitch into like a collective fund that they then use to advocate for policy changes?
I'm sure they do.
I'm wondering about that, because I've noticed in
and
an
that's
area not far from here, like just a little south of here, was PIBA, I think it was, the Peterson Elston Business Association, and then, those little like flags on the side of light poles and shit you'll see around the city for the different neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And it seems as though, like, normally I'm used to seeing, like, the big one in Albany Park is like Local Hearts Global Roots for Albany Park's little slogan banner, but that's by neighborhood.
It's a global neighborhood.
Yeah, but then if you look at, like, that might be something pushed by the alderman for the Albany Park area.
Yeah.
But what I've been seeing over there, it does say business association. So I'm wondering if that is something that's closer to what you're talking about there, conglomerate, or a collection of small businesses that have formed an organization together for collective advocacy.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic, and I'll want to explore further, like once I perhaps am involved in these other events where the orgs meet. But I think it's an interesting thing to sort of think about, because we talk about, like, right now, like as I mentioned, like the federal government and social security checks and people feeling disenfranchised. Monetary policy, is it supposed to be like this big thing that the city or state or federal government can only do? Like, they're the only ones smart enough to do, right? That's not true. People deal with money every day. So if perhaps,
if anything, it's a little bit patronizing to think that the
right.
government's the only one who's smart enough or capable enough to do this.
Right. But joining up together with money in a communal way, I think it's an interesting idea to explore, especially because it's not something you really think about, especially in America, because it's very individualistic. But I suppose that the Chinatown conglomerate has benefited from like getting together and like trying to figure out their ideas. I mean, of course they have, because their area had been designated to be this like touristy area by their alderman. So this has, holy shit, they've already established themselves in their fiefdom.
Oh God. the Chinese fiefdom. What about the Puerto Rican neighborhood over by
so
Humboldt
so
Park?
Little Village also has something similar, because Little Village outside of the Mag Mile is the second biggest revenue producer, like from their markets, like the street stores, right?
Mm-hmm.
Foot traffic expenditure is the second biggest on 26th Street, Little Village, after the Mag Mile. So that's another economic, communal, I guess, little fiefdom.
I wonder also what the history of, both in Chicago and in the United States writ large, this kind of community organization is. Like, was there a lot of that in the 18th century? Was there none of it in the 18th century? Why then did, from what I know about government spending, federal government spending in the 18th century was pretty damn low compared to what it was in the 20th and what it has been in the 21st century. And I wonder if there was more per capita or proportionally more of this kind of community organization back then, when there wasn't as much of this government-funded organization.
Yeah, I think so, because...
And then it'd be interesting to see, I'm sure there are economists out there who have done this work.
Oh, for sure.
That, compare, okay, what was the bang for your buck, so to say, of the private organizations. Okay, I can hear you smacking away, and your fucking clementine that you're eating right there.
Sorry,
Jesus
guys.
Christ.
I'll move away.
Or just point away from the fucking mic while you're chewing. Oh God, where was I? Anyway, yeah, I'm sure there's some economists that have done research on that subject. And you know what? I'm gonna see if I can find some books regarding that to talk about more thoroughly on our next episode.
So I have read a little bit of that book, about 40 pages into the history of Chicago, development economically. So when it was a village in the 1830s, early 1830s, Chicago had about 400 population. And apparently it was unique in its cultural, the way it was culturally standing. So the early 1830s, Chicago was a mixture of Native American, French, and Euro-American influence and people and cultures mixing in. It was very interesting because the Native American population still sort of lived around the village of Chicago. Like, the land around Chicago was still their land, the Native American land. So they just traded frequently. They just go into town and bring in furs and stuff. It was somewhat... the way the book described it was somewhat tranquil, like this trade of Native Americans and Euro Americans and French people in Chicago, and just trading back and forth. Because Chicago in the 1830s was the frontier, essentially, before you hit the great expanse of the West. So even when it was a tiny village of 400 people, there was still this aura that followed the mention of the city, because at the time there was this idea that, manifest destiny, and you're gonna expand, and there was already ideas, rumors, I think by the late 1830s, that Chicago was gonna have a great canal built from the lake, so it, connect to the Mississippi, and then you'd connect the North Atlantic to the Gulf of Mexico.
Through canals connecting the various Great Lakes to the riverways and other waterways. So
that's why there was a huge population boom in the 1830s. Chicago went from 400 people to 4,000 people in a couple years. Do you know which years between? Because, I remember 1833 to 1836.
I wonder when was John Quincy Adams president? Because I know during his presidency he did a lot of Department of Interior works, building infrastructure across the United States. I want to say it was the 1820s, maybe probably 1820s is when he was president. Maybe late 18 teens, now that I think about it.
He was president from 1825 to 1829.
25 to 29. Okay. So like right before this Chicago boom.
Yep. Yeah, so really, really cool. Also, kind of what?
You could hear you smacking away at that last couple of pieces of your orange.
Sorry, guys. I needed a little nourishment.
I gotta get my electrolytes. It's what the plants crave.
Yeah, so Chicago was this boom town, and yeah, economic policy. So, interestingly enough, during the boom time, there was a lot of land speculation. So a lot of people were like buying and selling land for crazy cheap. So one of the most infamous transactions was someone bought a plot of land for like $33, and then by the end of the day, they had found a buyer to buy it, to sell it at, I think, either it was $3,000 or $30,000 back then.
I'm gonna guess 3,000 because $30,000 back then is an insane amount of money.
I have my notes. Give me 2 seconds.
1,000, 1,000. All right, where the fuck are your notes, you son of a bitch?
Oh my god.
He lied.
Don't worry, I'll cut it out and there, and it'll be like a transition there. Like it was like 2 seconds, dude.
It's gonna fucking cut it to make it 2 seconds. You son of a bitch, making me the liar now.
Okay, no, it wasn't as extreme in. So my example, it wasn't as extreme. It wasn't from the same day. Anyway, in 1929, there was this lot sold. In 1829, it was sold for $33. Pretty big lot. I forget how big it is. Doesn't matter. That same lot in 1836, so 7 years later, was sold for $100,000. So still a fucking lot, dude.
And that's $100,000 back then.
Yes.
Jesus fucking Christ, that's an insane amount of money.
Yes. So it was really, really crazy. The native population around Chicago in what year was it? Oh yeah, I didn't know this. During the War of 1812, Fort Dearborn was destroyed.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Those Canucks came down and blew it up.
Yeah.
Although I'm pretty sure that was with the help of the allied native tribes.
Yep. And then...
Actually, now that I think about it, back where I used to live over in the South Loop, there's a Fort Dearborn Park. And they've got a little sign commemorating one of those battles during the War of 1812.
Yeah, all the people inside Fort Dearborn were killed.
It's our own little Illinois Alamo.
It is. But at the time there was nothing. There was nothing here.
Oh yeah, I mean it was probably
just that and like another guy's house who sold for.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it was Jean Baptiste.
I was gonna say it was probably like it was a fort there to protect the fur trading and the access to the lake that allowed for transporting furs east.
Yeah, so it was also another reason why Chicago became this prime location was because people would travel on Lake Michigan, like across Lake Michigan in little boats or canoes. And the area around Chicago had natural harbors.
Yeah.
So like you could just land your little
especially
canoe there.
with the river the Chicago River dumping out into the lake there.
Yeah. So a lot of interesting stuff, like how Chicago developed. Actually, one of the turning points of why Chicago grew in 1832, August 1832, there was a chief, Black Hawk, who crossed the Mississippi into Illinois to reclaim ancestral lands that they used to live in western Illinois.
With how many warriors?
Not a lot, like 2,000.
Yeah, that isn't that many. How many horses?
It doesn't go into detail.
Okay.
But about 2,000, and it wasn't all warriors. I think it was like their whole clan.
Oh, okay. So it's like a.
So they're like, we're just gonna move back to where we were, and the U.S. government was like, nope. So they were like kicked out essentially of Illinois, and actually there's a battle of bad acts. Illinois militia gunned down anyone trying to cross the river.
Oh my God, that just sounds like what fucking Caesar did to the, to the Germans.
Yeah, it was fucked up. They killed, everyone. The kids, the women, everyone. So,
not to mention however many people died just trying to in the panicked rush after being fired on.
Yeah. Yeah. It said several dozen, so I don't think it was a huge massacre, but it's still a lot. No,
I don't know. Several dozen sounds like a pretty big massacre back in those days.
Well, yeah, but like,
I mean, it's no, what I just gave, what I gave as an example with the Julius Caesar, that was, I think, in the realm of tens of thousands of people slaughtered.
Yeah, it's fine.
So it's definitely not that kind of a massacre.
So I can't read my freaking notes. I made them too tiny. But after that battle, the U.S. Clamped down on its territorial claims. So after 1832, they sent in more troops and just encouraged, I think, people to move into the lands, so they can, colonize the area. Essentially,
we had our own little settler program.
Yeah, yeah. They colonized the entirety of the U.S. So after that battle, they're like, oh shit. So Illinois wasn't affected by like the chaos that happened. So a lot of people thought Chicago was gonna be a safe place. There's Fort Dearborn there. So after that, people flocked to the city, and then came the rumors of the Great Canal there came great rumors of a great canal being built, or plans of a canal to be built at the Chicago area.
And that probably attracted quite a few people who were looking for employment.
Yep. And also around this time, the lands around the north of Chicagoland, the Indian lands, the Indians were forced to sell their land. So yeah, more settlers to go settle.
Well, I wonder what they used to force them to sell the land. Did they try to do, I don't know, was this like an early version of eminent domain?
So what had been happening in the decades prior was a lot of French traders had already intermingled with the native tribes of the area. So a lot of what happened was a lot of the actual dealings of land, the native representatives were already sort of Euro-Indian mixed.
Both French and Native American heritage.
Wealthy, businessmen in a way. Like they already were established in the fur trade or owned, wealth, right? They were the representatives of the native population for some fucking reason. The book that I'm reading doesn't go into details, and it's stated in the prologue.
Prelude?
No,
introduction?
The prologue.
Prologue?
Yeah.
Okay.
The book has a prologue.
Okay.
That's what it's called, right?
That can be called many things.
But that's the word, right?
I mean, most often I read introduction before prologue.
Anyway,
I don't know. You're the one reading this book. I don't know why you're asking me.
No, I'm just asking. That's what usually books have a prologue, right?
I mean, usually they have an introduction.
Okay, whatever. Whatever. It's the correct word I'm using.
It's the thing before the
book,
the pulp of the book.
So the book itself states that's not gonna go into details of battles or economic outputs, and it's not gonna give out these specific things. It will provide references, and of course it is a historical book, so it is providing references, but it's not going to go into certain areas who's who and who made what money and where did they get that money. It's not the point of the book. Anyway, yeah, so a lot of native representatives, and essentially they were forced because the U.S. militias and military was just like, especially after Black Hawk, everyone understood east of the Mississippi that they don't really have a chance to stand up to the federal government. It's just numbers wise, you can't do much. And
Black Hawk was the name of the chief, right?
Yeah.
Is that where the Chicago Blackhawks get their name from?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think there is a tribe called Black Hawk as well.
That's what I thought too.
So it was like a conglomerate of like different tribes. But yeah, reading Native history always makes me sad because like they have a special
it
place
is a very
in my heart.
sad. That is that, and also it is a very sad history.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a history of disease, death, and warfare.
Yeah,
and what's the word for it? Expulsion.
Yeah. So after the lands north of Illinois and around Chicago were sold, the natives of that land were kicked out to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's my review of so far what I've gotten 40 pages into the book.
Sounds like a lot of information.
It was a ton of information.
You know, I mean, it'd be interesting to go talk to the American Indian Cultural Center, like people there, and see like family accounts or family histories of Native tribesmen that are local to the Chicago area. See how long their families have been here.
That's true. There's so little of them.
Yeah, I wonder how many of them were people who have since returned to the area, or families that have since returned to the area after being given the boot.
Yeah. I know a lot of people returned to Wisconsin. A lot of natives returned to Wisconsin after they were kicked out, I suppose. Because there are a lot of reservations way in the north, but they're also small.
Yeah.
They're very tiny. And there's not a lot of people up there.
And they're nothing compared to like the size of the reservations in like Oklahoma. Because as far as I remember, several years ago, there was a Supreme Court case hearing that essentially acknowledged that about a half of Oklahoma is sovereign Indian Nation territory.
Yeah, what is it?
It's like I think the whole eastern half of the state, essentially.
Yeah, I forget. The Pueblo? Is the Pueblo?
No, the Pueblo tribes are much further west. They're in like New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona area.
Well, yeah. I mean, hopefully, because Oklahoma was supposed to be all Native reservation.
Yeah, there was a petition. I remember hearing briefly about it. I need to look more into it, but there was a petition by a group of American Indian tribesmen back in the 1830s, maybe 1840s, maybe as late as 1850s, that tried to get their like an American Indian state added to the Union. It's essentially where Oklahoma is today. They were going to have a state that was, I guess, built for
natives by
Indians.
natives.
Yeah, for natives by natives. Would have been interesting though, because I mean, would they then have excluded white Americans from white or black non-Native Americans from moving
or from their government?
Yeah,
that would have been interesting.
Which you know, I mean,
the white Americans did that to the black Americans.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they would have done it. Like,
and then the white Americans would have been like, "Hey, that's racist."
Anyway. I don't know. It would have been interesting to see, because like then there would have been like constitutional questions about whether or not states had the right to exclude racial minorities, and then the civil rights movement would have been a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, with the Indian state. They're like, fuck everyone.
Fuck everyone. We don't want this civil rights bill because we don't like whitey or blackie.
Yeah, that would have been funny. So yeah, tune in next week for more Chicago history.
Yeah, there'll be a lot more to talk about then. I'll be honest, you just giving that like little history of Chicago made me think to myself, fuck, I really need to get around to reading the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, because it is exactly what you described this book not being.
Oh yeah,
like stupid detailed.
Yeah,
and all these circumstances. Granted, it's like 3 volumes and a collective 2,700 pages long.
That's just... see, I guess, but like, what use do you have to have all of that knowledge?
I don't think I would retain all of that knowledge. I remember I read the first chapter of that book, and like, Jesus Christ, it was just like, the whole first chapter was, here's the strength of the Roman Empire at its height. Like, borders, military strength, both in navy and army.
Its legions.
What a legion could do in a day. It was insane.
What was the emperor at the height? It was like something weird, like Draxius or something. Emperor or something.
I mean, this would have been like shortly after Emperor Augustus's rule.
No.
Because this was in like, well, actually no, this was probably closer to like 100 or 200 AD ish, in that range.
Sorry.
I don't know. I read this chapter a long time ago, and I got done with the chapter, and I thought to myself, well, fuck, that's too much information.
It's not Draxius.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single Roman Empire who's never was named Draxius.
It's Trajan. Trajan. Emperor Trajan commanded the most legions of any Roman emperor. Yeah.
I've been meaning to read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations.
Same for years now, because like I always hear about.
Oh, you know what? My brother just got back from Europe. He spent some time in Italy, and he brought that book with him to read. I got to see if he finished it while he was over there, and if he did, I'll annex it from him. Seize it, take it.
Yeah. So. Moving on from Chicago history and Roman history, some quick fire topics, world news.
Yeah. There's some world stuff we were going to talk about too.
Quickly, let's go to South Korea.
We're doing global stuff. We're not gonna do some like America.
Let's do quickly the global stuff, then we can end with America.
So South Korea, there's a couple of things that we were talking about.
Yeah, so South Korea, yesterday, the government put out an ultimatum. So there has been a strike going on.
Is the strike because of the ultimatum, or was it the strike precede the ultimatum?
The ultimatum is because of the strike. It's been going on too long, the government is stating. So there are a group of doctors in South Korea, apprentice doctors. So, like you go to med school to become a doctor.
So the doctors who are doing their residencies.
Yeah. So there's about, I think it said 13,000 total in the country, in South Korea. And about 9,000 of them have walked out in solidarity of their group to protest a new government mandate. This government mandate is what's it called?
This is the one that you were telling me about it.
I know, but no, I'm forgetting the word in English, but I'm remembering the word in Spanish.
All right, then say it.
Exigiendo, demanding. It's not the same thing. Anyway, the mandating. Sorry.
Okay.
Whoa, my brain first thought in Spanish. Anyway. The South Korean government is mandating in the next year that 2,000 additional applicants be submitted to the doctor training program or residence program. So a lot of the current resident doctors, is that the word I'm supposed to be using? Resident doctors? No, that means they're already established. I'm just gonna keep saying trainee doctors. So the current trainee doctors are protesting the government mandate, stating that the resources will be diminished for the group as a whole. Interestingly enough, a lot of the hospitals nationwide aren't completely affected by the strike, because out of the 9,000 or so trainee doctors that this is pertaining, there's about 140,000 total doctors in the country. So this isn't crippling the system yet. So the government's trying to stop like a momentum or the snowballing effect of perhaps other stuff, or other groups joining the trainee doctors, like the official representatives of the doctor league in the country. Anyway, yeah, the trainees are protesting this mandate specifically because in the big cities, the big hospitals, they are staffed by the trainee doctors because that's where like the big schools are. So 40 to 50% of the big hospital staff is represented by the trainee doctors. So so that's half of your working staff, right? Walking out, you can't do that.
But what reasons did they give for walking out? Like, there's the mandate, but right. why do they not like the mandate?
Because it's going to force everyone to share their resources with the 2,000 additional people.
Yeah, so you remember we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, and you were saying that it had something to do with perhaps them worried about taking pay cuts as a problem, as a cause.
Right.
As a consequence of this.
Right. Yes, that as well. Furthermore, the article that I read stated that was one of the criticisms. The opposition of the group is stating that they are just protesting so they get more money, which I don't know. It's just very interesting to see the government say, hey, so the consequences are this coming Monday, if they don't report back to their job, they will be contacted and they'll have the option of returning to their job or pay a fine of 30 million won, which was like $25,000, I think, or get your license suspended for a year, or if you don't do the above items, go to jail for a year.
This sounds like, I'll be honest, this does sound like a situation where the people protesting have greater weight here, because so the government mandates they need 2,000 more doctors to be trained, and they're gonna jail.
I know, like 9,000.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? You're gonna jail the 9,000 doctors? Okay, great. So you now have a deficit of 7,000 doctors, and also like if you're jailing the doctors or like fining them absurd amounts of money for, this kind of a protest, are you gonna disincentivize people from joining? And also, how are you going to get people? Like, is it a matter of like these programs, they get a large amount of applicants and they only admit a certain number, and the government wants them to start admitting 2,000 more, or is the government trying to push the populace into applying for this program?
I think it's a bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
the one thing about South Korea that I saw this week was about how South Korea has been trying to push some policies to increase their birth rates, because they've been having a declining birth rate for the last, I don't know, however many years, many years, and how like these policies they've been pushing just have not been working. And
it's because, go on.
No, it's about where I have.
It's because of, they're overworked.
Well, yeah, and which makes sense if they're working a ton.
They work more than Americans. They work way more than Americans.
And there's just not the time to think about starting families or having kids. And even if they do, it's like, oh well, if I'm pretty well off and I don't have a ton of time, I'm not gonna have like 4 kids. I'll have 1 or 2 tops. Yeah,
it's crazy. There's just the whole societal pressure that we don't understand as Americans that Koreans face. For example, I think the equivalent, right, of graduating high school, you take these exams in Korea. Here we would take like the SAT or the, what did we take?
The ACT.
We took the ACT. Yeah, there's the SAT and the ACT. Well, here we took the ACT, which is discontinued. But anyway,
kind of.
Yeah. Anyway,
there were some colleges that stopped taking ACT and SAT scores, but that kind of backfired, and now those colleges are starting to re-accept those as good measures for like, okay, is the student going to succeed at college?
We can get into that, but like, yeah. So in South Korea, they have like a big exam like this at the end of their like tenure.
To graduate high school.
Essentially, yeah, like the same equivalent. They shut down the airspace above South Korea when the tests are happening, so kids aren't distracted. Because this is how important it's, right? You're like,
no, I guess that
you're
makes
like
sense.
giving
It's a
a
pretty
face,
small country,
but right, but it's still kind of it's kind of weird. But like, it's because of how important this is. So like, if you don't do well on this exam, you won't get into the top employers. And that right there eliminates thousands of people, perhaps tens of thousands of people, from the prestigious positions.
and from being top earners.
Yeah. So that's another thing.
Also, I mean, another big thing about another big difference between, like, at least culturally speaking, between South Korea and America, well, culturally and by policy, is the conscription. South Korea does have a mandatory conscription for all people, like, what is it, minimum, I think it's minimum of 2 years military service before the age of 30.
Yeah.
And there was a whole big hubbubaloo about that.
I think it's just males, though.
It's probably, yeah,
It's
just males.
yeah.
But, you know, I think remember there was a big hubbubaloo about that with like one of those K-pop bands and how they had to like take a hiatus for some of their members to do their military service.
Yeah, BTS.
Was it BTS?
Yeah, it is BTS.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, another reason why this exam and the way South Korea is structured is that people work for the conglomerates.
What does BTS stand for?
I don't know. Oh, behind the scenes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say back to school?
I don't know if BTS, the Korean pop group, stands for behind the scenes, but I just know that, let's say in like the movie industry, when you say BTS, it's behind the scenes.
Well, that makes sense for the movie industry.
I don't know if BTS Korea is BTS behind the scenes. Anyway, it doesn't matter. South Korea is essentially controlled by monopolies, and I guess they are monopolies, but they're conglomerates more so, because
things like Samsung.
So what do you know Samsung for? What do they make here? What do you?
Computers and phones primarily. Mostly phones and phone accessories.
All right. That's the American perspective, right? That's your perspective. In Korea, they do everything: insurance, banking.
Samsung?
Yes. Pensions,
really?
Life insurance.
I mean, and pensions and life insurance, that I get, because a lot of those are put through private companies, but I didn't realize they were like a...
No, but they're like financial institutions.
Yeah, I thought they were more along the lines of just like a tech company, not a financial institution.
Research, right?
Well, that makes sense, because like companies do research for projects, but...
Pharmaceuticals. I don't know if Samsung does pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that seems a little...
But they do all these things, right? And they're not the only ones. There's several different bakals, I think they're called, in Korea, that pretty much have their hands in every major industry in the nation. Yep. Like Hyundai. That's another big one.
Hyundai is a South Korean company?
Yep.
Okay. Isn't Kia also a South Korean company?
Yeah, Hyundai and Kia are South Korean.
I know also South Korea is, I don't know about if they're number one, but they're like the top 5 arms exporters of the world too.
Yeah, very industrialized. We have to go.
Speaking of arms.
We have to go to the robotics exposition here in Chicago.
When is it?
It's in May.
Yeah, I could do that. That'd be interesting.
Hyundai's going to be there. A lot of Japanese corps are going to be there.
But real quick. Speaking of the arms industries, let's switch the focus over to Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
So I was watching this report. You know, there's the funding bills with more military aid from the U.S. being held up in Congress. And, like, it looks like Ukraine is pretty brittle at the moment. And I wonder, like, how long it will be before we see some large shifts in the front lines.
Oh yeah, you were mentioning like
we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording, and I saw this piece on how like it's gotten like the shortages of ammunition for like artillery and anti-air weapons has dropped to the point where in certain small instances in localized areas, Russia has been able to actually exert air superiority. And then there's the other aspect of the fact that like Russia built up their defensive lines to hold off the Ukrainian counteroffensive last year, and they had these big, deep, double layers of trenches and lines of defenses, and that Ukraine just does not have the in-depth defense that Russia had to be able to fight off Russians if the Russians are able to push forward with a large advance. A large breakthrough.
Yeah.
Like if the Russians break through one of the key defensive points, there isn't a secondary layer of those defenses.
Really?
Not to the same degree, and how like the defenses that were ordered were like lagging behind in construction, and how also there's a bill in the Ukrainian parliament trying to call up mobilization effort to raise troops.
Oh yeah, that's been an ongoing issue for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and it looks like they've been debating it, and they probably will put it through, and then it'll get the law will be passed, but it won't be passed for like maybe a month or two, and by that point it's very late in the game, and who knows if they're going to even have the material to supply and train these soldiers, given that U.S. material aid is not going anywhere. It doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah. They need to start building tunnels. The Ukrainians.
Ukraine, take a lesson from Hamas. Just build tunnels. Oh, wait, you've got an enormous amount of land to cover.
Thousands of kilometers.
As opposed to what, 30-ish kilometers? Maybe 60 for Gaza?
Yeah.
The other thing, too, is that, like, I don't know, I've been thinking about this. Like, I do think that it is morally right to support Ukraine in their defense.
Oh,
hang on. Go on. I see that excited look in your eyes. But I think it's morally correct for us to support Ukraine's defense because they were attacked by Russia. They didn't attack the Russians. But this is one of those situations now where I'm thinking the ethical thing to do might not be the moral thing to do. And the ethical thing to do might be to be like, okay, Ukraine, we aren't giving you weapons anymore because we just can't seem to get our shit together with giving shit away here in the States. So you're going to have to negotiate for a settled peace because that will stop the death. Because, I mean, in this same piece I was watching, it's this YouTube channel called Warographics. Shout out to them. They're pretty good at going into in-depth strategic analyses of things going on, and of course over the last few months their focus has been on Ukraine and Gaza, but they like I don't know, I just don't want to see more people dying. I think Ukraine announced that they've lost, according to the Ukrainian government, 31,000 dead in the last 2 years of war. And the analysis in this Warographics piece I saw from this, I can't remember the name of this Russian blog post, but they used essentially, I think, inheritance claims as a idea to get an estimation of how many Russian soldiers have died in the war, and the estimation was somewhere between 55,000 and 80-some thousand.
Oh.
And the point that the channel Warographics made was that even at that low estimate, that's still more deaths than the United States suffered in Vietnam, and we were like, okay, we're sick of that.
Yeah.
And that's a collective death between the two sides of, let's say, give or take 100,000 dead in 2 years, not to mention all of the combat casualties who are either wounded and back on the front, or wounded to the point where they can no longer fight.
I saw that number of the Russian side lost a lot more. I think it was like in the hundreds of thousands. No, 100,000 plus.
Of what? Dead or
missing?
Dead or missing,
or
wounded wounded to the point where they cannot return to the battlefield.
Right.
Which, I mean, it's not surprising
because casualties, right? It's 100,000 casualties.
100,000
or
casualties.
plus 100 casualties.
And the Ukrainians are probably somewhere around 50 or 60,000 casualties, which is not a good ratio. I mean, it's not a good ratio for Ukraine, because Ukraine does not have half the population of Russia. It has like a quarter of the population of Russia. Not to mention the amount of people in Ukraine that fled Ukraine. They
have to maintain a very high KD ratio.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, like, it's not surprising that Russia has suffered more casualties, because in any combat, or in most combats, the offensive side is going to suffer more casualties than the defensive side. At least in most cases. Especially if you're talking about like a traditional war. I mean, I don't think that applies so much to like what's going on in Israel and Gaza, because Israel's just bombing the fuck out of that place, and I don't think they're really suffering nearly as many combat casualties as Hamas is. Although, you know, we have no idea exactly how many Hamas fighters have been killed. I've heard reports, like, Israel likes to claim that 10,000 of the 30,000 killed in Gaza have been Hamas fighters. But then I heard like an unverified and unconfirmed comment from a supposed Hamas leader saying that they lost somewhere around 6,000 fighters so far.
Oh, shit. I mean, I've heard Netanyahu say that, this was maybe a couple weeks ago, that they have destroyed 3/4 of Hamas's fighting force or something like that, and that the next weeks or months will be trying to eliminate the rest of official Hamas fighting force.
Yeah, I wonder how, because I mean, didn't Hamas have a fighting force of somewhere around 20 to 30,000 fighters?
Yeah.
I wonder if like Netanyahu is saying, well, we've eliminated those fighters, or if they've eliminated those fighters' ability to fight. I mean, destroying tunnels, blowing up weapon stockpiles, and killing fighters themselves.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's gone beyond, the conflict has gone beyond, I guess, reason, because like a couple of days ago, Hamas leadership came out still stating that they're gonna destroy Israel.
Yeah, they're gonna destroy Israel, and they're like, there was like these floaters of like there were these feelers out there of a possible ceasefire for release of hostages, and a ceasefire for like some amount of weeks or months. And like over the last couple of days, I remember seeing something along the lines of like how the Hamas leadership rejected that possibility. And I don't know if they think like, I don't know if they're thinking, okay, we're going to hold out until we can get a permanent ceasefire. I say permanent ceasefire. As permanent of a ceasefire over there can be. Or what Israel seems to want, which is more of like a, what do they call it? A pause in the fighting.
Yeah.
We'll pause the fighting for, a few weeks while we get the rest of the hostages exchanged. But then we're going to go right back at it to destroy Hamas. It's one of those things where, again, like, I don't know if you can destroy Hamas. You might be able to destroy the organization, but the idea of it, I don't think that's going to be destroyed anytime soon.
Yeah, because...
At least that idea can't be destroyed with bombs.
It is an idea, right? You can't destroy an idea.
Well, you can. I think you can destroy and defeat ideas. I just don't think you can do it really with military force.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you because... yeah, I mean, that's what essentially this is about now.
I think it's more so, like, at least on the Israeli side, it's about revenge, and it's about Netanyahu not wanting to deal with an election.
Oh, yeah, it's all stupid. It's all stupid, man. Like, Hamas, let's say, never turned to extreme jihadism and became, in, like, the 60s, some engineering fanatics, right? And
In the
built
60s. Hamas didn't exist in the 60s.
well
But the idea of it,
yeah. Let's say in the 60s, instead of going towards jihadism and Islamism and like these extremes, they turned to knowledge and built great structures in Gaza City, became great engineers. You know, what if something else happened, right? So I'm just
fucking Saudis.
I'm just stating that, you know, this idea of religious zeal can be is motivational, right? It's not helpful, but these emotions and energies that the people can produce can be shifted into other things. So instead of, you know, right now we're not talking about anything of like what's going to happen after the conflict ends, right? But like, I think because a lot of that will be dealt by, you know, the U.S. and the Israeli government and other big players, and it's not going to go well at all because it's all bureaucracy and stupid paperwork and red tape.
Well, and it's also it's two other groups deciding for another group what the outcome is going to be,
right? But
which is going to cause resentment because they're not going to like what the outcome is, and then, you know, you're going to breed a new generation of Hamas-esque fighters.
Like if
I also do blame the Saudis and Wahhabism and that exportation.
If they can't like get over this jihad mentality, holy war, this is, you know, our land, holy land, you know, they have to get past that, and so do the freaking Israelis, these religious zealots.
It's jihadism versus Zionism.
It's just the holy war. And
you know what? That's why I go back to this every time I think I get this about this far into thinking on this subject. Fuck it. Let's just glass the place with nukes, and then no more holy land equals no more holy war. But you know, that would be something that the evangelicals in America would actually like.
So
oh God.
Yeah, man, just, I don't know. Somehow get the Arab. I don't know. We're somehow get like the Palestinian mentality to like just shift away from this religious zeal and fever that they feel they have to lean into because of their tragedies, right? Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to even state that and then, you know, want them to even possibly think like that because, you know, their life is completely different from my life. I mean, yesterday I was just at work, and then, you know, I'm chilling. I can't comprehend what they're doing or how they're going about their day to day. But yeah, it's been decades of maintaining this fever.
Decades of maintaining a feverish enmity towards the Israelis and the Americans.
Yeah, man. It's just, you gotta, like I said before,
and the feeling of enmity that the Israelis have towards the Palestinians.
I said this before. You gotta turn Israel. You can't call it Israel anymore. You gotta change its name to like Bethlehem or something. And then
the Republic of Bethlehem.
And then you have to.
Well, I mean, you know, Bethlehem. That's an interesting thing we bring up Bethlehem, because I know Bethlehem, like at the when Israel was founded in like the 40s, Bethlehem was a majority Christian city.
Yeah,
like
Crusades,
a huge
man.
Christian city. Nowadays, it's majority Muslim, huge Muslim population, and a lot of the Christians in Bethlehem have moved out of Bethlehem and into like either other Christian cities in the area or into Israel proper itself, because Bethlehem itself is in the West Bank.
Oh, yeah, or the Belen. I like Belen as well. But like I mentioned a couple episodes ago, Israel has to become New York City. Just a bunch of boroughs. You have to live together. You have to connect it all together. You can't hide and isolate yourself culturally. It's just, you can't. You just gonna have to be forced open. Come with diplomacy.
Bagel shops everywhere.
Tunnels too. New York has them too, you know. So
bagels and tunnels. That's what we need. That'll solve the Middle East crisis.
It will.
Oh God.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a little bit of domestic politic talking for a moment here. There was the Michigan primary that was last week, and there was that protest vote. Oh God, I mean, we're staying on topic and going off topic at the same time because there was this Muslim-led Michigan protest vote against Biden as in the primary to vote not for Biden in the Democratic primary, but to vote uncommitted. And I think that got tens of thousands, like upwards of 30 to 40,000 votes, maybe as low as 20,000. But I know it was in the tens of thousands of votes went to that. And the margin that Biden won Michigan by back in 2020 was like between 20 and 30,000 votes.
Oh, no.
I know. That's I don't know. I'm going to make this prediction right now that Michigan is going to go to Trump.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like I get the point that these protesters in Michigan are making, but like here's the thing.
They're not thinking about America.
They're not thinking about America, and B, okay, yay, you don't vote for Biden and Trump wins the state. Now you get Trump, and regardless, Trump's gonna be on the side of Israel and is gonna give money to Israel.
Yes, because he wants the evangelical vote, and the evangelicals want fucking Jesus to come out of fucking Israel and shit on the world.
Yeah, come out of that cave he's been hiding in for the last 2,000 years.
And no, like legit.
No, I know.
Legit,
this is a legit.
They want Jesus to come out of Israel.
I know, and then
vanquish all of the enemies.
Yeah, and Armageddon will happen, and they will be raptured up into heaven, and like that's why I think the biggest tourist block for Israel is American evangelicals.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's why it's important to understand. And this is something that I hate when like people like Netanyahu bring up is like, if you criticize Zionism, Netanyahu is like, oh, that's anti-Semitism, because to criticize Zionism is to criticize Jews. And it's like, no. There are tons and tons of Christian Zionists, and they're called evangelicals, and if I don't like them, that doesn't make me an anti-Semite, because there's nothing Semitic about these people outside of the fact that they want to see a bloodbath in the Middle East so that their savior, who I don't understand how they square the circle, the savior who preached peace, because I mean, you know, from what I understand about the Bible is that the Bible's pretty fucking bloody up until Jesus comes around and starts saying, guys, let's not murder and kill.
Yeah.
Except for a few things. I think Jesus did support some minor genocide back then.
I don't know. You know what? I don't know. I'm not well learned enough in the history of the religions.
You're gonna read. How about this? You read
the Bible by next week.
Well, no. You keep reading your Chicago book. I'll take a look at the Jesus part of the Bible. From what I understand, I think it's only like the last eighth of the Bible.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah.
That's the only Jesus part?
Yeah, I saw this, one of the more recent Louis C.K. specials. He had a bit about the Bible where he's holding the Bible up and he's talking about all this shit, and then he looks and he grabs it, just a little bit of the back of the Bible, and he goes, this much is about Jesus. The rest is not. Because, I mean, the Bible, you have to think about it, because the Christian Bible is the Jewish Bible, Old Testament, with the New Testament smacked onto the back. Because it's essentially, all right, this is the first group of lessons that God gave us, and then he had a son, and this guy was like, okay, that stuff was true, but now we got to update it. And then a few hundred years later, Muhammad came about and was like, okay, yeah, Old Testament was true. The New Testament, that was also true, but now we've got the final testament, and it's the Quran, and it is the ultimate truth. It's one of those things, because that's the thing. The Jews are like, you're all fucking wrong, and then the Christians are like, no, you're all wrong, but there could be there might be an update, and that's what we're waiting for. And then the Muslims are like, no, you're all wrong. The update's here. Get with the program.
Yeah. What if we sponsor a new religion to come out of Bethlehem? They're like, everyone's wrong.
Everyone's wrong. Well, I mean,
we're in New York now.
Well, the thing is, you might be able to convince, like, okay, let's say you go and you're going to be like, all right, it's the second coming. I go
to Bethlehem.
You go to the Christians and you go, all right, guys, this is the second coming of Jesus. You go to the Jews and you're like, yeah, I know what I said to the Christians over there. I know I told them it's the second coming, but that's not what's really happening. This is the first coming, because I know you guys are still waiting for that savior, right? Yeah, all right, cool. Yeah, he's here. Just ignore the fact that I'm telling the Christians that he's the second coming of him. He's your first. Just bear with me here. And then you go to the Muslims and you say, hey guys, Muhammad's back. You know how he wrote that book? He wasn't finished. He's got some updates. Do you think that would work? Because I sure as shit don't.
No, there has to be a completely new religion, like bagels and tunnels.
You know what? I think we should start our own political party. It'll be called the Bagels for Peace. No, bagels and tunnels. I mean, what if we made a tunnel out of bagels?
Nah, because the Middle East gets all its grain from Ukraine.
I know.
There's no grain right now.
Yikes. Yeah, that's one of those things where it's just like... Oh, speaking of grain and farming, how about all these protests that have been going on in Europe regarding from farmers? Because I know there's been some protests in France, in the Netherlands, in Germany, and then most recently I heard about some stuff in Spain about how farmers are having issues because of the drought that's going on in Spain, or the dry weather that's slowing crop yields.
Yeah. And
how the farmers there want more assistance from the government to support their livelihoods, I guess.
Oh, okay, that's different from the main EU farmer protests.
Yeah, because those are more so about
like policy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is itself about policy. These people want better subsidies for themselves so that they can have a financial future in farming.
Subsidies. What would happen if the government just stopped subsidizing the food producers? Would we just collapse?
No, I don't think so. At least not in the States. I mean, some of the corn farms might collapse, which would be probably a pretty good thing, because those monocrops are not doing our soil any justice.
True. Also, interesting tad bit. Like in America, there's a lot of like corporate farming going on, like a lot of corporate, like a lot of big corporations come in and buy local farmers' plots, and like then they just make,
or they put them into like contracts where they have to go through them as suppliers.
That too. In Illinois, most of the Illinois farmers are independent, small-time farmers. So yeah, shout out Illinois.
Hell yeah. For all of, that's the thing, for all of the problems I have with Illinois, there are also other things that are unique about Illinois that I just fucking love.
Yeah.
Like, we get most of our power from nuclear power. That's excellent. Yeah. That's super clean energy.
I want more nuclear.
I do too. You're fucking preaching to the choir over here. But the other thing I like is what we were talking about before, not in this episode, but in a previous episode, and what we've talked about, outside of recording, the Biometric Privacy Act that Illinois has. It's the only state in the entire union that has a law about biometric privacy, which I was thinking about the other day. I did way back in the day one of those 23andMe tests, and now that I think about it, they have my DNA on file and they own the rights to it. And I wonder, with the precedent of the law that we have in Illinois, if I wanted to delete that app, I wonder if I could petition and force that company to delete the DNA data they have on me.
Maybe. Yeah.
I think it'd be. I think I'm going to look into that this week.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've gone on long enough.
I think so too. Yeah, I think this is good chunk of Chicago and then bouncing around all over the world.
Yeah.
All right. Well, real quick housekeeping before we wrap up. So this episode will be coming out on Super Tuesday, and then a week after that, Illinois, our state, will be having its primaries.
Oh yeah.
And I'd like to encourage you and everybody else to vote in the Republican primary, because Illinois is an open primary ballot, so you can be a Democrat and vote in the Republican primary. You just wouldn't then also be able to vote in the Democratic primary, but there's no real point in doing that, at least in my view. So I think people should, if Nikki Haley sticks in through it, to vote for Nikki Haley in the Illinois primary.
Why vote for Nikki Haley?
Because I don't want to see Trump be the nominee again. Like, the only fucking reason I want Nikki Haley to get the nomination is because she's 30 years younger than the other two people, or like
That's
25
true.
years younger.
And you know what would be?
And like, that's the only thing, because everything else about Nikki Haley is like standard fucking Republican, really hawkish against Iran, would definitely give money to Israel and Ukraine. Like, everything about her is the things I don't like about politics, but it's,
you know what
it would be a little less chaotic, I think, and I could use a little breather for a bit.
I think it will also be cool to see how she interacts with other world leaders.
Yeah. I mean,
That
she
would
was
be
our
interesting.
she was our ambassador to the UN during the Trump
but now she'll be
presidency.
president.
Yeah, and also,
Madam President.
I'll admit, it would be a nice little fuck you to the Democrats if the Republicans are the first person to put forward a female president.
Yeah.
Granted, the Democrats put forward Hillary Clinton as a nominee, but we all know how that turned out.
Yeah, no, but like just
People did not Pokemon go to the polls for her.
just overall, like it'd be interesting to see, perhaps, I don't know, just her meeting with other world leaders and her just being super American, like just a American chick. and they don't know what to do.
And she even has a little bit of that like southern drawl to her tone. That would be interesting to see up there.
That'd be cool. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. Let us know if you agree with our ideas.
Let him know if you agree with our ideas. I don't really give a shit if you do or don't.
I don't either, but I appreciate feedback.
Yeah, that too.
Just say if, like, something we said made you laugh or think differently. But anyway, yep.
All right, we'll see how this week turns out, and if there's anything crazy we'll have to talk about next week.
Yeah,
I'm sure there will be.
Yeah.
This has been a crazy decade so far.
Yes, it has been. All right.
Farewell, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.